Hey, this is Rob Anspach, and welcome to another edition of E-Heroes. Today's E-Hero is Richard Bueckert. Bueckert?
Bickert.
Bickert. I knew I was going to mess it up, and I'm glad that you're cool with it because everybody messes up my last name.
Yeah, same thing. It just gets slaughtered all the time.
But we're going to talk about magnetic marketing and Infusionsoft today, and I think it's important that I'm not a big Infusionsoft fan, and there's a lot of reasons why, but I want Richard to explain to people out there that maybe it's not as confusing as people make it out to be. And we're going to talk about a little bit about magnetic marketing. And on a previous episode, I did speak to Adam Whitty. You guys can go back and watch it or listen to it. And Adam is the president of magnetic marketing. And, Richard's doing a great job as an advisor. And I think he's going to do a great job on the show.
I'll do my best.
So, everybody, and for years, everybody called Infusionsoft Confusionsoft. And I don't know if that was the reason why they changed the name. Maybe you can fill us in.
Yeah, and there's no question when I first bought it, you'd look at it and you're like, oh my God, what did I buy? Right? And there was no campaign builder. There was no visual way of laying out your campaigns. Over the years, they've done a lot of work that way, which made all the difference for me. And because originally I was an Infusionsoft user, not a certified partner, and it took a lot of years to get the hang of it. And it's like anything else. It's if you go to learn a language, it's gonna the first little bit you're gonna be sitting there glassy-eyed wondering what the heck your instructor's saying to you because it's all Japanese. And it was the same thing with Infusionsoft. The basic rudimentary stuff. Yeah, I had no problem. Could I make it use it like MailChimp and have it send out 6 emails 2 days apart? That was easy. Where it started getting complicated was when you started, adding multimedia to it. You'd ask it to send out a text message on certain days and email a different day. It would give you a reminder after that. And then all the triggering where, let's say you send out an email sequence and one of the things you want them to do is to click for a download. And, when they make the click, it triggers another campaign or another sequence. And then it was like, okay, well, what if they don't click? So you have to start building all those contingencies in. And that's where it took a lot of time to learn it. Is it excellent at everything? Absolutely not. Landing pages, if what you really want is a landing page, get lead pages or ClickFunnels. Far better landing page. I used to use ClickFunnels, and then there's enough functionality in Infusionsoft now where I can use their landing page builder. It's still pretty clunky compared to ClickFunnels, but I can make it work. And by making it work, I save myself $100 a month that I don't have to give, for instance. So it's a matter of can it work for your business, and if so, use it. The name change was not so much an attempt to get away from the old acronym of Confusionsoft, which was kind of funny. But what they're doing is they realize that in order to use Infusionsoft properly, it takes a lot of work and a lot of effort, and you have to have a fairly high growth business to justify using it. So the numbers that they gave is there's 22 million businesses in the U.S., small businesses, and Infusionsoft's really only designed for maybe 2 million of that 22. So when they came out with the Keep product, they've really simplified the interface. They've taken a lot of the functionality that a lot of businesses wouldn't use out of it, and they've made it so that for someone who say he's an electrician and maybe has a receptionist and 2 other electricians, the Keep product is way better suited for their use, and the learning curve is way less. So that was the biggest reason for that. But
they took the overwhelm factor out.
Most of it, yeah, and they did a really good job of it for the most part. There's still some things that are not in it that I would have liked to have seen, but for things like you have a on the Keep Pro version, you have a visual sales pipeline now where instead of the old way of having to get the software to move a client from stage to stage to stage, now literally you can go on the screen and you click it and drag it and drop it, and it's so for a non-technical person, it's a lot more intuitive. So
yeah, we before the show we talked about Frankensteining systems. A lot of entrepreneurs have this, I don't know if it's an innate ability of taking pre-existing things and trying to slam them together to make them work.
Yeah.
But I've been seeing that more and more, and they don't want to spend 200 hours or 300 hours on a system like Infusionsoft. So they take all these little itsy bitsy things, whether they're free or whether they cost low, and they try to force them to work with each other, and then they break. And then they're like, what am I going to do? And nobody can figure it out.
Well, that's, and that before we put Infusionsoft in, that's where I was. I was using, if you remember, Act, which is ancient now. And you try and combine that with a spreadsheet, and, it was a mess. And that was the reason I originally went to Infusionsoft, because, there was the promise that, we can add in your e-commerce and everything else. What they didn't tell you at the time was, like, you can't possibly do this yourself because you don't have the skill set. So, and that's one of the things that, like, you probably see it as much as I do, is they've got a Google sheet and they're trying to use Zapier to push things into the sheet, and they're trying to pull it out and put it into MailChimp. I'm like, this is awfully complicated. And if any one piece, gets an update, then it doesn't work. It's not compatible with your WordPress plugin. And I'm like, it's just a mess, So, yeah.
And I've been noticing, on WordPress right now, because we build a lot of websites for clients, is that, we prefer Divi, because Divi is a little bit more user-friendly than most of the themes. But every time Divi updates, which seems to be every day now, plugins break. And when plugins break that you're used to using, now you got to go search for something that's actually going to work.
Right.
And, some of the plugins now just aren't keeping up with the updates, and things are breaking. And so with, trying to have one unique system that does 90% of what you do and not have it break is probably better than having everything mishmashed together and then watching the whole thing collapse.
Yeah, the advantage is that when the less complexity you can build into it, and you'll probably see it in your stuff, is, for example, the website goes down. So they phone Rob and, Rob, my website's down, you got to fix it. And, you check it at your end, and, well, it's not the website, it's, it's Zapier's doing it, and we didn't set Zapier up, so you got to fix that. And now he's phoning the Zapier guy, and, well, it's not him, it's the whatever it connects to on the other end. So from a client's perspective, there's a lot to be said for having one vendor that does everything for you and it all works. So, so if you're doing the website and you're taking care of the CRM and everything else, well, now it's like, Rob, fix it. And Rob fixes it because he knows where it's done. And that's the one thing that I see all the time, is they don't think about how to properly combine things. So they'll use me for the CRM, and they'll get someone else to do their Facebook ads. And he's like, well, I need a landing page. I'm like, okay, what's the ad? And they're like, well, what do you mean? I need a landing page. I was okay, but if you've got 9 products and your Facebook ad is going to be for one of them, so which one, and what's the lead magnet? What are you trying to get them to do? Because you have to have that congruency that if your Facebook ad is showing a picture of a mom and an infant, and then they go to a landing page that's got a picture of a main battle tank. There's a real disconnect there that they're like, am I on the right page? And they very well might be.
Right.
But if I don't know what the Facebook guy's doing, and yeah, you just, so much of it now is just fractured, and it just causes all kinds of problems. And business owners don't realize it because they're just jumping from, they'll look and they'll go, oh, Slack, this is really cool. And then they get Slack, and then they don't realize that, okay, wait a minute, this doesn't work with anything. And it's like, so then, yeah, it's fun.
You mentioned a word, fractured, and I think that plays a very important part in the marketing. And maybe that's what, prompted you to become a magnetic marketing advisor, because you wanted to help, bring that fracturing back together.
Yeah. Well, initially it was completely, for myself, because when you go through the different, and in at Advantage, they talk about, an ascension ladder, like your gold and then your diamond, and MMA tends to be the top one. And it was always a matter of, okay, what can I do to make my business better and more functional? But as you ascend through the different levels, you realize that a big part of that community is the more you give back, the more you actually receive. And one of the magnetic marketing advisors are, besides being a very high-end mastermind group, we just had a meeting last week in Atlanta, and you're expected to listen attentively, contribute to the group, give your ideas, but the things that I got back in return far outweigh the cost of the course and the input that I was able to give, because you're dealing with people that are, they're all up at this level, and it makes it very easy for me to, when we have our 1 hour free marketing call for clients, I can give them a ton of value because of the things that have been told to me in those groups, and that's been a lot of fun. So it's really enjoyable to, have somebody that, when you're talking to them either in a group or a forum that, may only be, new to digital marketing, or, they've only had their business a year, and their eyes just, they light up because they're like, oh, I can do that, and it's like, that's really enjoyable. And it makes it all worthwhile.
I met Dan Kennedy back in 1998, and that's how I was. I mean, my eyes lit up. I mean, when I first met him, I sat at a table, and he was like this grumpy old man. I had no idea who he was. I'd never met him before. But within a few minutes, he basically ripped ripped me apart because I was telling him, how unique my business was. And, and I was about ready to throw the guy out. I mean, he got really upset me. And then they called the conference back in, and we take our seats, and Dan gets up on stage, and I'm like, what? This is grumpy old guy going up on stage, and, but what he said blew me away. I mean, the techniques, the ideas, the tips, and I just fell in love with marketing at that very point. And 20 years later, I'm still using it and growing my business, and and just meeting people at GKIC events and No BS, and it's amazing that there's so many people that are teaching this stuff out there.
Yeah, my first run-in with Dan was actually quite a funny one. Was back in the early 90s, my parents ran a power sports business, so we did like boats and outboards and snowmobiles and that kind of stuff. And we were a Skidoo dealer, and they were introducing the 1993 Skidoo models in February in Edmonton, which is like going to the North Pole. And my parents are like, we're not going. Like, it's cold there. We're like, to hell with that. Like, you're going. And I'm like, I don't want to go to Edmonton. It's cold now. So anyway, so I end up getting shipped off to Edmonton in February. and it was cold. It was like 35, 40 below when I got there. So you don't leave the hotel, you just stay, and so they're introducing all that, and they have this, the keynote speaker and this guy comes out with and at the time it was, the big afro and the Fu Manchu, and I'm like, who's this guy, right? So it turns out this is Dan Kennedy, and he starts talking, and I'm listening to this going like, this guy might be onto something, because he's saying everything opposite of what the manufacturer says you have to do to sell snowmobiles. And I'm like, but it all makes sense, and you could tell that the company, which was Bombardier, were getting, you could tell they wanted to get him off the stage, because he's saying all this stuff that is exactly backwards to what they're saying. And then at the end of it, he does, and apparently, from what I was told, he wasn't supposed to do it, but he does the spiel to buy magnetic marketing. Mm-hmm. And this is version 2. So this is a 3-ring binder with photocopies of photocopies of photocopies, and cassettes that, some of them had labels and some of them actually were handwritten. So, I'm like, at the time, you don't know what's in the case because you haven't got it yet. But I go to the back of the room and I'm looking at this stuff. I'm like, do I really want, like, can I get this later after I go home and like kind of tell my parents? And he says, no, it's like, you have, if you don't buy it now, you're not getting it. I'm like, okay. So, I take out my credit card and I buy it. And of course I get home and my mother sees this and she just flips. What kind of crap is this? And it's like, oh my God. And I'm like, okay, so, I just I'll send it back. And I didn't. And then I started taking some things out of it and I started to use it. And I'm like, this crap works. It's like,
yes, it does.
Yeah. And then, so then we were looking at the other day, and I've got Magnetic Marketing Volume 2, Volume 3, Volume 5, Volume 6, and Volume 7. So I've got like 5 sets of it. And, now the 25th anniversary one came out and I have that one. But it's, everything that is in magnetic marketing about changing your business from pursuit to attract, all makes sense. Okay. And it's all done by positioning. It's all done by, creating your authority, your credibility, your expertise. And when you do that, you don't have to pursue people. They pursue you. And, we were talking about before we went on, we were talking about a mutual acquaintance of ours who's pursuing you, and it's great when you get to that position where people call and it's like, can you help me? Yes, I can.
Or you say no.
Yeah. And some of them you can't. And that's, and that's part of it. And, for whatever reason, you can't afford me. We're not a good fit. I tend not to do well with people that, like you said, like when you originally met Dan, and my business is different. It ain't different. It's maybe a different product, but the guy that goes to the car dealership is the same guy that comes into your business, and he's the same guy that goes to a dry cleaner, and the same guy that grows groceries. He doesn't change personalities in the grocery store.
Right.
And, and so many businesses just want, well, my business is different. No, it's not. Yeah. And, so when you get, when I get people that just want to fight over that, it's like, okay, you're right. Your business is different. I don't know anything. You need to find somebody else. And, because I got enough people that I can help, that I don't need to aggravate myself. And, as you can tell, hair loss has been an issue. I haven't got any more to give. So I'm done.
Yeah. Mine's going white.
It was going there. And I just had the big landing strip. And then, in my old career, when I was in the protective coatings business, what used to happen was if you get, industrial epoxy in your hair and you try and brush it, it just takes big clumps out. And I just said, I don't need, so I just shaved it all off, and I've never.
But with your coatings company, you were local. I mean, you were local in your Canada area, and now you're in Florida, traveling and getting to do whatever, and that's the joy of being a marketing consultant.
Yeah.
You're not tied to a local region.
Yeah, it's always funny when somebody says, "So where's your office?" Not any Starbucks. They're like, "What?" I said, have Wi-Fi, we'll travel. So it's, and the other nice thing is it gives me the freedom to, I said on Sunday I'm flying to LA to visit a client there. If I had a location, he'd be coming to me. And one of the things that he said has been one of his, pet peeves is anytime he needs, like, let's say with his Infusionsoft, which is one of the things I'm going out there for, is that he's always dealing with people that are trying to fix his problem remotely. Well, that can work, but when you have a problem that is not necessarily strictly an Infusionsoft problem, it's a systemic problem where staff aren't doing things right, and there's a real benefit to being able to go and get your boots on the ground at the site and see what's going on. And he says nobody wants to come out. Yeah. Well, but, pay my airfare, I'll come out. So that was easy enough to solve. And as a business owner, you have to have a way to serve your clients the way that they want to be served. And when you're doing that, they're happy to pay. They'll stay, they refer, because you're taking care of their problems. And it's as simple as it is.
It's I find that the biggest problem with some of these entrepreneurs is just to get started. They just procrastinate, or they want everything so perfect before they even launch. I'm like, if you would have just launched 2 weeks ago, you'd be making money already.
Yeah, that's pretty common. And you probably get that with your clients as well. It's like, I need you to give me this so that I can build your, I need information on what you do so I can build your website and put it on the webpage. Okay, this should be fairly easy. And 3 weeks later, you've got nothing. And they're like, is my website built? With what? They don't get that. They just expect that you can go on their old website, which is complete garbage and was done in 1988, and take that information and make it right. And I'm like, okay, first off, your business isn't, it doesn't do a lot of this. And yeah, it can be really frustrating from, from our perspective.
The fastest way for me to get to know a client is to do, a video conference with them using Zoom or Skype, and just spending 30 minutes with them. And I'll ask them a bunch of questions, and then I'll transcribe it. And that becomes the copy for their website, because honestly, I'm not going to take away from their old website because, like you said, it's garbage. I want new stuff. I want their story. I want their emotion. I want their personality, and then that helps sell their authority. Absolutely.
Yeah. And that's a brilliant way to do it. And it's even better if you don't tell them they're being recorded because they tend to be a lot more honest that way.
Yeah, then they start dropping the F-bomb, and then I'm like, no, I'm not putting that in the website.
Well, you can delete that out. It's like...
So how do people find you? I mean, where do they go? How do they learn more about you?
Well, the majority of them actually I run into at any of the No BS Inner Circle events, and they track me that way. The easiest way is, my website, which is just my name. So it's Richard Bueckert, which no one can spell, which is probably not the best name for a website. Although if you go to our company name, which is Railgun Marketing, either .ca or .com, it'll just forward to my site anyway.
So Railgun.
Railgun, yeah. That was, we were looking for so the whole thing about magnetic marketing, and if you know how a railgun works, it uses, instead of using an explosive to push the projectile, it uses magnets to actually pull it along. And they're like, think of it like an electric sniper rifle, and that's probably the best way to describe one, other than they're big. And we thought, that's pretty interesting because it uses magnets, and our marketing, we like the analogy of a sniper rifle as compared to a shotgun. I want that person right there. I don't want to spray everybody with my marketing message. And so we thought, it's great. And then we used, we got the name and put it in, and then we realized that nobody knows what the heck a railgun is. I'm like, okay, probably not the best idea, but once you explain it, they're like, oh yeah, okay, that makes sense. But
yeah. And in certain towns now, it's like no tolerance for guns whatsoever. So as soon as you say rail gun, they're like, duck.
Yeah.
Yeah, they don't want to. So it's but I think that teaching these people, not these people, entrepreneurs, how to market is essential, because I was taught marketing 20 years ago from the same, Dan Kennedy. Dan was 100 years old back then, and he's still telling the same stories. You get up on stage, I've heard that 12 times now. Doesn't he have something new? But it's funny because these entrepreneurs need to hear that same story. They need to get it in their head. They need to learn, that marketing sometimes is repetitive. But the more you start to repeat it, it's kind of like Infusionsoft. The more you repeat it, the easier it gets.
Yeah, and and the fundamentals never change.
Right.
They certain medias may change. Like Yellow Pages is for most businesses no longer a viable media. Although if you were selling certain things to somebody, say my dad's age, who is pretty much, he doesn't have a computer, he doesn't have a smartphone. If you're trying to market to him, Yellow Pages is still viable. It's just that segment of the population is obviously diminishing, because when people get into their 90s, they're a little more likely to pass on than somebody in their 20s. But it's media is just a way of delivering a message. And when somebody's and I get this all the time now, like a lot of our B2B clients are like, oh yeah, we got to be in LinkedIn. Okay, why?
Yeah.
Well, because that's where all of our prospects are. Yeah, they're on Facebook too, and they use Google. So you want to take the Facebook stuff that's working. You want to get rid of that, and the Google ads and the SEO that's working. You want to get rid of that and go to LinkedIn, which we haven't even tested yet.
Mm-hmm.
No. And and there's times where you just got to be blunt and say you're not doing it. Like, right. Absolutely not. We'll test it, and if it works, then we'll scale it up. But it's shiny object syndrome.
Or they take a marketing message that is clearly working for 99% of the world, and they take it and they tweak it down to the point where they feel that it works for them, and then they send it out and says, oh, it doesn't work. Yes, it works, but look what all the stuff that you did, and it's no longer even the same piece. And then they argue that it's still the same message, it's still the same. And you're like, come on.
Yeah. Well, and that's, it's the one thing that, Perry Marshall talks about as far as optimization is, don't change it for the sake of changing it. Mm-hmm. Change it because you've come up with an alternative that is giving you better results. Mm-hmm. And then that becomes your, your standard that you're going to compare to, your control, and test something else. And then if something beats it, then that becomes the new control. Mm-hmm. But a lot of them, we've got one client that wants to change things for no other reason other than she's tired of seeing it. But it works, so, it's, well, I want to run a Facebook ad on this. Okay. So, let's add that, but I'm not turning the other one off because, and then we let hers run, and she has these ideas, and then it runs, and, it pulls usually about a fifth of what the control does. Mm-hmm. And I'm saying, okay, so the control, for every dollar we spend, we're bringing in $3 and change. And for every dollar that we spend on yours, we're bringing in 93 cents. Which one do you want to keep running? Mm-hmm. And, it's like, and let the old one run. Okay, fine. So, and you just gotta, sometimes you just got to be a little hard-headed with your clients and say, we're not doing this. It's like, you hired me to do this. Let me do my job.
I had but I won't say a pissing match with a client, but they tried to get hard-headed with me, and I'm like, that's not how I do things. And And then they're like, well, isn't the client always right? I said, no, not in this case.
No.
And she's like, well, I'm the one who pays you. I said, when have you paid me? And I said, you're late on the payment. And she's like, well, I guess you're not getting paid then. I said, well, you're fired then.
Adios.
And it was okay with me, you know,
Yeah.
but you have to sometimes let clients know that you're the one who understands the marketing better than they do. And, but clients are clients, and they're going to try to justify all their reasonings and, you know, all the things that they think that should be happening. And so, you know, I always tell them, I said, look, you know what, you can play the game however you want, but in the end, you know, it's the results that matter. And if we're getting the results, then I don't think you should be complaining, but they still do.
Yeah. So as I mentioned, like when I grew up, my parents had the power sports business, and both my parents were alcoholics, and my mom passed away at 49 years old back in 2002. And she was our company CFO. And in spite of all of her shortcomings, she was a brilliant CFO. And she gave me a couple pieces of advice, and two of them have stuck with me forever. The first one comes to, you know, when you need to get a lawyer, an accountant, or a marketing person, she said, hire the best and cry only once. And it referred to when you got the first bill. So I thought, okay, and every time I've not done that and I've gone cheap, it's end up, you know, it bites me in the ass. And I'm like, you know, and it was like, you know, you buy cheap shoes and you go run a marathon, your feet are done, you know, because you cheaped out $50 on the shoes. And it's the same with professional help. And then you come back to it and you're saying it's the only thing that makes any sense is, why would you want to hire anyone? You know, imagine you've got cancer. I want the most expensive, brilliant guy I can find. Like, I don't want the guy that just graduated from cancer school or whatever they call it.
Yeah. Because,
you know, the other guy does, you know, and you see it so often. And then the other thing she said that, you know, because she was another one of the people that didn't believe the customer is always right. And she said, clients or customers are like roses. If you want to grow good roses, you have to learn how to prune. And I'm like, yep. So every once in a while, you got to prune a client. Bye. So.
Yeah, and you know, if you're out there listening, you know, it's okay to fire your clients. It really is.
Just not all of them at once.
No, not all of them. But see, this is what makes Richard an e-hero, is because he understands the concept that, you know, not all clients are worthy of you. And the ones that maybe you've hired that are starting to take advantage of you or not doing things the way they're supposed to can get fired as well. And so, yeah, you know, hire the best. And if you get the bill, don't cry about it.
Cry only once.
That's right. So I want to thank everyone for listening, and stay tuned for the next e-heroes. I want to thank Richard Bueckert, and go to his website, railgunmarketing.com, and I'll see you on the next show.
Thanks, Rob.